Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Some of the things that we've talked about, that you've talked about, the grief, I think that's a big one, because this entire time I felt like I've been constantly still carrying something in my chest and I couldn't figure out what that is. And so maybe that's part of all of this too, is still just grieving other areas of my life, and even grieving today, like you said, that, my life looks a lot different than I'd hoped it would. So grieving that, but then also, thinking, wow, my life does look pretty good though today.
You're listening to Make Some Noise Podcast, episode number 649. Welcome to Make Some Noise Podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Happy freaking New Year. Happy freaking New Year. I hope that 2025 is your best year yet. I'm going to say that every year because I truly mean it. I hope it is your best year yet. And guess what? We have another coaching episode for you. This was intentional. I put one out last Wednesday. It was Christmas Day. And then today, New Year's Day, is another one because we are celebrating the updated and revised version, the re-release of 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, which was my very, very first book, baby, many, many years ago. I had the privilege and honor to revise it and update it, and it is out wherever books are sold. And also, if you're not sure you want to buy it, or if you just want a free little workbook, go to andreaowen.com/52-ways. There you will find a free download that contains chapters 2 and chapters 3 of 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life. Chapter 2 is about taking responsibility for your life and your choices. And chapter 3 is cannonball out of your comfort zone. Last week, we talked to Christina. You heard a coaching session with Christina around getting out of your comfort zone. And then this week, we're talking to Jenna. And her challenge was the big question of, how do you know if you're on the right path? I think a question that so many of us have asked ourselves. And I felt like this question, this topic, so closely related to the chapter in 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life around taking responsibility for your life and your choices, looking at the reality of things. What do you have control over? Where do you want to be headed? How do you know if you're headed in the right direction? These sort of like high-level existential questions that I think so many of us face. So that is free over on andreaowen.com/52-ways. Also, if you go to that link and sign up to get that free PDF download, you will also get access to 3 free group coaching calls that I am doing this month, January 2025. And I hope to see you there. I would love to see your faces. Come and say hi. You guys don't even understand how happy it makes me to see your names and see your faces of those of you who listen to the podcast. It can feel pretty damn lonely over here, talking into a mic all by myself. I know I see you on social media, but it's truly different when I get a little nervous even like seeing all of you. I'm like, oh my God. I'm so happy that you're there. So head on over to that link. It's in the show notes to sign up for those free things that are happening. So today we're talking to Jenna. As I mentioned, Jenna was struggling with the question, how do I know I'm on the right path? And as I mentioned in last week's coaching podcast episode, you might be listening to this and you have very different circumstances than Jenna does. However, what I want you to listen for are kind of like the universal truths and feelings around asking these questions. And I do think that by listening to this coaching episode, you can ask yourself some of the same questions that I'm asking Jenna in this particular episode. That's why I put these out for you, because I'm hoping that you see yourself maybe a little bit in the topics that these women bring so bravely and vulnerably to the show, and that you can get some benefit out of listening to someone else get coached. I unfortunately don't have an update for you yet about how Jenna's assignments were. I just recorded these a couple of days ago, so it's still too soon. However, in the weeks coming up, I will have an update that I can tell all of you how it went for her. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jenna. Hi, Jenna. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Andrea. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited and humbled to be here.
Oh, I am so excited too. And if you could, even though I already said your name, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell everybody where you're from, where you're calling in from.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jenna, and I'm calling from Galesburg, Illinois.
Illinois. All righty, my dear. And what is your topic today? What is the thing that you want coaching on?
Kind of to sum it all up in one statement, it's how do you know you're on the right path in your life?
That's a big I love big existential questions. Like, let's get into it.
Right. It's so deep.
It is. It truly is. It's a big one. I love it. I think there's so many people who can relate to that question, who are like, oh my God, me too. So before we jump in, what is it like, if you could think of something to walk away with from our call that would feel amazing? Like, what is one thing that you want to walk away with?
I would love to be able today to just feel like I have maybe a better understanding or some guidance of feeling like I know that not necessarily that I know, but maybe just a little bit of intuition that, hey, I am on the right path, or definitely getting some tools and some guidance and things from you today to take with me moving forward to help me to feel like I know that if I do this, I'm going to head that way.
Feel like you have better understanding, tools, guidance to feel like you're on the right track.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. I am curious to start with, what do you make up? Like, how do you know that you have this question? In other words, like, what do you make up feeling like you're on the right track either feels like or sounds like in your head?
That's a tricky question in itself, too. So when I wrote into you, I talked about knowing that you're on the right path, making a decision to follow a path and sticking with it, even when you have things going on in your life or you're kind of battling against yourself. I've learned over the years that, we are our hardest critic, and we're really hard on ourselves, and we constantly have so much going on in our brains. Like today, I feel like today for me, I could be on the right path. I mean, I've already made steps. I've taken, and clearly, my life is a result of my choices. And so where I'm at today in my life, I mean, I definitely am very fortunate, not having children, and I'm single. I was married, but now I'm single. And I have a lot of things in place in my life today, such as counseling. I have a really good work support group. The people that I work with, they're really huge support. And I listen to your podcast, and I'm doing all of these. I'm also in a support group called Al-Anon, and I have people in my life who have lived similar life patterns and been on similar journeys. And so I feel like right now I have some really, really helpful tools that kind of help remind me that, hey, I really am on a right path, because, and with me being in school and wanting to finish my degree, it's like, okay, all right, I'm on my way. I'm gonna get my degree. That can open up a lot of doors for me. I'm in counseling regularly. So I'm working through hurdles as life presents them, but also working on my mental health, if you will. I mean, I'm constantly trying to learn and grow. So I think that's really helpful too, in terms of thinking that I could potentially already be on the right path. But I'm also human. Sometimes I get stuck in my own thoughts and ways, because I'm ready for the payoff now.
That's what I'm wondering about. Like, okay, so I'm going to stop you right there at that moment. Yeah. Like I'm ready for the payoff now. I am getting a hunch that you have put expectations on yourself, and maybe they're unconscious, that you have put expectations on yourself about maybe where you should be at this age, or
Yes.
where you originally wanted to be, or where, like how our society tells you should be at. Is anything like that happening?
Oh, 100%. I will own
Okay.
that. So I'm kind of reading back into like part of what I wrote into you, and I did say, how do you stay positive on the journey that you're on? I'm on this journey in my life, and at the moment it makes sense, but I struggle with steadying the course when all these different ideas want to pop into my head, and those ideas, I would agree with you, stem from unrealistic expectations on myself, and because I'm my hardest critic. Yeah, and I actually had this conversation with a friend the other day. I'm 37.
Mhm.
And obviously for me, I planned on being married to my ex-husband. I mean, we were together for 10 years, married for 7, and I loved him. And even up until the last, the moments leading up to our divorce, I didn't want my divorce. I wanted to work out. I wanted to work on our marriage, and it takes two people to make a relationship work. So that really turned my life upside down because yeah, if you would have asked me a long time ago, in my mind at 37, I would have told you, we'd still be married. We may or may not have had children, but my stepson would have been an adult, and we would have been building our lives together. And where I live, and sometimes I really think that where you live and the environment that you're in, that plays a huge impact on it too. Because
Totally. Yeah.
where I live, a lot of people my age are married with families. And I know a few single women, including myself, but the majority are married with families.
Mhm.
And as a woman, I think we're predispositioned to wanting that. And so, yeah, so I have thought to myself, man, you're 37. You're single, you don't have any kids, you don't have a family. And I'm a very family oriented person, and I love family. So yeah, that's been hard for me. And also the expectation of thinking that, I should already have my career by now and be settled in that. Life looks a lot different than I would have thought it
Mhm.
would, that I would have wanted. And so really leaning into that in terms of thinking, okay, well, my life doesn't look like I had hoped it would, but focusing on the fact that it really still is really good.
Yeah. Okay. When you imagine yourself, and maybe, it might help if you close your eyes for a second and you imagine yourself not elderly, but like in your mid 60s, maybe like let's say like so you're 37 now. Let's imagine that you're 67. You're 67
Mhm.
years old. Maybe you're retired or very, very close to retirement. When you are telling someone who's younger than you. So you're 67 years old and you're having a conversation with someone younger than you, and they are maybe in a similar path that you're in, or they're asking you for wisdom and advice. And you are reflecting back on your late 30s. What do you want to be proud of in how you were showing up for yourself and how you were showing up for your life at this time?
I'd want to be proud of myself that even when I was stuck or I felt stuck, I kept going. I still pushed myself every day to work towards something good. I allowed myself the ability to feel all of that, but I kept going and I didn't give up. I didn't give
Mhm.
up, and I did the best I could with what I had, and I worked hard. I kept trying basically. And hopefully, I would like to say that it paid off. And it may have took a lot longer than I would have liked it to have,
Mhm.
but it paid off in ways that I can't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine.
You came up with that answer so fast. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I was just about to say, if you need some time to think about, and you were like, no, here's my answer. Because I can see you on video. The way that you said it sounded and looked very definitive. Here's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
What's important to you about, especially the part about knowing that you did the best that you could? And it also sounds like I make up the word resilience, persistence, tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
Are those good descriptions of what you
Yeah.
just said? Like those are
Yeah,
kind of like the attributes.
I would say so.
What's important to you about those?
Life is hard. It's not easy. And a lot of things that I want, I'm going to have to work for. I can choose not to work for them, but how's that going to work out, or how's that working out for me? Just in the short amount of time I've been living life, I'm already practicing those things with other things that I have going on in my life. And I've just learned that those are really important traits to have because life is going to happen to you no matter what. You can be doing all the right things and you can be feeling like you're on the right path, and life happens. And so, but the important thing is how to course correct when it does, or not even necessarily that you have to completely course correct, but you have something thrown at you and it's like, okay, this is what it is. And so what am I going to do about this? And not giving up. I've seen what it looks like to give up. I know what it feels like to give up. And for me, it feels worse to give up than it does to keep going. For me, it's just so important to have those things and to keep pushing because I have to. I'm the only, it's just me. I mean, nobody else is going to, nobody else is going to show up for me and do this life for me. Yeah. I'm completely 100% in charge of my life and what that looks like. So I want to be proud of that. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of just knowing that I did the best I could with what I had at the time, that's all I could ask for, because I'm not perfect. I'm never going to do this perfectly. But as long as I know, kind of like with my marriage, I'll use my marriage as an example. That was really hard, and I still love my ex-husband. I never stopped loving him. Yeah. But when somebody leaves, you have to let them walk away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to let them. And so, but for me, I think the one saving grace for me and the thing that gave me peace of mind, even on my worst days, because I came out of my marriage with such low self-esteem and fear. But the one thing that kept me going was I knew I had done everything I could to make that work, and it just wasn't going to work anymore.
Okay. So you had honored that part of yourself.
Yeah.
If you're a woman over 40 dealing with perimenopause, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. Did you know there are so many perimenopause symptoms? Hot flashes and night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness, and libido change, weight and body changes, brain fog and memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk. The experts at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers, no membership fees or hidden costs. If you're uninsured or Medicare is out of network under your plan, they also offer affordable cash payment for services. I know for me, as I'm about to turn 50 in 2025, finding a doctor that specializes in perimenopause and menopause is incredibly important. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it, and anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty. me.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can, and I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
I get the feeling that you seem very wise for a 37-year-old. I get the feeling that, and I may be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that based on everything that you've said, as well as how quickly and efficiently you answered that one question that I had around like, what do you want to look back on and be proud of? Are you able to tap into a part of you that is like your true knowing, like, you know, you can call it your intuition, your highest
gut
self,
feeling.
Like, do you have easy access to that part of you?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I don't know if I do all the time. Kind of why, part of the reason I definitely wrote into you and wanted to have the pleasure of the experience of talking with you about this. I have had instances in my life where my body or my gut, something was speaking to me and I went with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think that it was the right choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's been proven that it was the right choice. Sometimes I don't know. I just know that where I ended up after making that choice was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're not sure how the other choice would have ended up. I want to kind of like, if this is helpful, like to sort of like point out maybe like how it might have looked different in different instances, or at least one different instance of your life. Like when your marriage, when you knew it was imminent, that it would end. For many people, the very afraid part of them would feel desperate to save the marriage and bend themselves in all kinds of twisted positions in a self-abandon to the extreme in order to try to save it. But your intuition knew, okay, this is where it's headed, and this is going to suck, but I'm going to be okay on the other end. Is that sort of a fair picture that I painted?
Initially, no, but I got to that point.
Right.
I couldn't see it right when it was happening but when I think back on it, I think probably within the last year before my divorce, I could feel it. I could feel that something was coming. And you're right, because I was that girl. That was my life. And
Sure.
And it was a hard life. I mean, it was great when it was great. But there was trust issues. I mean, we had the whole gamut. I know now, I mean, he really did me a favor by walking away. Because I wasn't able to, and I wouldn't have been able to. I would have stayed and like you said, twisted and bended and did whatever I had to do. And knowing what I know now, that's not a life to live. But yes, so the divorce happened. And then as time went on, though, that's the reality that I came to was it worked out the way it did.
So I'm curious about when you said, I think you said like around a year before you felt it, because people access their intuition and they describe it differently. Some people hear it, some people have visions. A lot of people say what you said and that you feel it. So let's just hypothetically speaking, say that today we are recording this on December 13th. Today, this Friday, it's Friday the 13th. Oh my gosh, it is Friday the 13th.
It is Friday the 13th.
It's a magical day. It's a magical, lucky day. I am going to just stake a claim that your intuition has a very easy portal today on Friday the 13th to help you answer these questions during our call together. So that being said, what would your intuition have to say about the question of how does Jenna know she's on the right path?
I suppose it would be, for me, it would be little instances of things that are happening like this, like me being on this call with you. I have a counselor I see regularly once a week, and he and I talk about a lot of things, and my conversations with him every week help. I really
Mm-hmm.
think those do. It would be these little moments, the little moments of things that, I don't know if you've ever heard this term or not, but some people say, is it odd or is it God?
Yeah. I call those
And
breadcrumbs. Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I would say for me, it would be the little breadcrumbs. Also, you know what, sitting back and realizing like, hey, girl, like you're 37 years old, you've got it. I mean, you're doing the thing and you are leaving yourself open to so many opportunities by, because some of the other things like we were talking about earlier, it's like, I'm gonna be 40, and I feel like because I was married and had a family in my 20s, I'm in my 30s, and it's like I did it backwards. Like I'm living my 20s and my 30s where I'm quote unquote dating, but not really dating because I'm choosing not to date at this point because of everything else I have going on in my life. But you're just kind of in that phase in your life where you're single and you're trying to figure it all out. So it's like I'm doing that backwards, and so I feel like my 40s is when hopefully maybe my life is really going to start as
Yes.
an adult. The little breadcrumbs, the occasional moments when all just seems right with the world, I suppose.
Okay. Tell me about those moments.
What, like, I'll use this as an example because another thing that really helps me to know that I'm on track or that I'm in a good place is my Al-Anon meetings. And I'll go ahead because for people who don't know what Al-Anon is, it's a support group for the friends, families, and loved ones of alcoholics and addicts. And I'm an adult child. I come from a long line of those. So, and I haven't lived with active addiction in a long time, but to me, this program, it's 12 steps, and it's a 12-step program, and it's a recipe to live a good life should you choose that. So we talk a lot in time about program about trusting in a higher power. So that is another way, in terms of trusting in a higher power, that I am right where I'm supposed to be, because I know with life you have to go out and make it happen. I mean, you can't just sit on your couch and ask for a career and a husband and a family. Like you have to go, you have to do your part. But
Right.
there's a difference between doing my part and forcing solutions. And I know today I'm not forcing any solutions to the best of my ability. So I suppose that's another good way to know that I'm on the right path, because life is just kind of flowing.
Mhm.
And in the meetings, I just, when we talk about different things, I just get these little, like, I don't know if you call it like an aha moment, or just something really continues to resonate with me that, oh, okay, that hit. Okay. That's where I'm at. Okay. That's what I need to do to work through that. So if I had to say something, those types of things.
Yeah. Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
I talk to a decent amount of people who have the same question about their life, of all ages, but and it can happen. I've even talked to women who are in their 50s who are like, oh my God, like middle age seems to really bring this big question on. And most of the time, there's an underlying feeling of panic
Mm-hmm.
that they quote unquote like don't have their shit together, that they like, what is my purpose? Like those are kind of the phrases that I hear. With
Mm-hmm.
you, it's slightly different. In all these questions that I've asked, the information that I'm getting back is that you see the breadcrumbs. You're also eating them. You're like, oh, there's a nibble. There's God. There's it. And I'm wondering if you are like that. Part of the challenge that you're facing is that I'm not necessarily saying that you're questioning the breadcrumbs, but are you maybe questioning that they're the right breadcrumbs? Like, am I kind of
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
this? Okay.
I think so. Yeah. That's what it is. It's like, okay, all right, I'm on this journey. I've made the choice to go back to school to finish my degree because that would really mean something to me. I'm choosing not to date because I don't really have the energy for that today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also on this health journey of mine where I'm working with, this is my second functional medicine coach, and
So
I'm
you're being
trying to.
very intentional about your life through the action that you're taking, it sounds like.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Like I'm trying to work on my health. I'm trying to make myself more marketable. I'm working my program and I'm sponsoring people and I'm growing that way. Because I'm working on my mental, because that's the thing. Like you talked about, like women feel like they don't have their shit together. I feel like I have my shit together, and
Yeah.
I'm confident that I do. But it's having my shit together, but applying that and really, because I want to be open to imagining a life that I could have that could be completely different than what it looks like today. Like my goals are to find a career that really settles with me. It's not going to be perfect, but I want a career that I light up in, that I feel like this is it. And I'm contributing, and what I do and say matters, and I'm helping people. I mean, cause that's the crux of my, like, I love me some people, and I'm a very people oriented person. So, that's why and I want to grow in wealth. Absolutely. And I'm open to leaving Illinois when the time arrives. And I do want to maybe at least, have a partner again someday, maybe have a family, whatever that looks like. But just hoping that I'm asking the right questions and I'm taking the right steps today for what I have to get towards that.
Okay.
All of that.
Can I offer an assignment for you to do?
Absolutely.
This goes back to one of the very first questions that I asked you about. What are these expectations that you have that would make you feel like you're quote unquote on the right path? And we talked a little bit about, social conditioning type of expectations. And you've kind of brought it up again right now when you said, I want to, find a career that, and I wrote down like really settles with me. I also jotted down a note, because what I am also listening for when I'm having these conversations with people is like, what's important to you about the way you live your life? What are your values? And there's a couple of things that you've said. And also we chatted a little bit before we started recording that pointed towards human connection, like on a little bit of a deeper level than just like having friends and acquaintances at work. Like a little bit deeper human connection is truly important to you. And sometimes that comes in the form of a romantic partner. Sometimes it comes in the form of best friends, et cetera, et cetera. So could you commit to having the homework assignment be, what are the expectations that you've put on yourself in terms of when you would feel like you have checked off the box of feeling like you are on the right path? I want to be very specific when I assign this to you, is that none of these expectations are wrong. So if you think to yourself like, well, a lot of it's social conditioning, like I don't want you to skip writing that down, because like when it comes to you, you're like, well, that's actually not a great expectation for me to have. Like write it all down, because it's all information, it's all data that's going to help you come to a solution around this.
Yeah,
What do you
absolutely.
think about that assignment?
I'm completely fine with doing that assignment. And a couple things that came to mind for me when you were talking, definitely, and health is a huge focus for me, because health is wealth. For me, I've learned that, if you don't have your health, you don't have the ability to have the energy to show up for people in your life. And so that path too, it's like, okay, well, I'm working with a functional medicine provider or, coach, and hoping I'm on the right path with that. And when you were talking to me about the social conditioning and the human connection and things like that, and you are correct, I'm very human of that, but I am also working to condition myself to practice radical acceptance and say, like you said, because maybe it's not in the cards for me to have another partner. Maybe it's in the cards for me to have people in my life, though, that give me those deep human connections to offset what is different. Because also too, practicing radical acceptance and making peace with the fact that, just because I want something doesn't mean I'm supposed to have it. And it can look, and it can look different. So really being open to and opening my mind and turning that narrative around and being very positive about, okay, well, like this is where my life led me, but it's a good life.
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things I want to underscore and ask about that you just said. So I'm going to go backwards. The thing you said about, turning it around and being positive, that to me is like flag on the field. Like I never want anyone to feel like they have to work on turning their circumstances or their mindset into a positive when there's something that needs to be honored in the circumstance. For instance, like if there's grief that needs to be honored, like if you are sad and mad and whatever feelings that that your marriage ended and or that you don't have a partner right now, like please feel those feelings before you work on trying to turn it into a positive, because it is a always you will lose that game, my dear, of like trying to push away feelings, especially when they're big, like grief. And I'm not saying that that's where, I'm just giving an example of like what might be happening. And then the other thing around, I'm sure you've heard me say on the podcast a million times, and maybe in one of my books, that when we're thinking about the things that we want, whether it's a partnership or a new career or even better health, it's not really the thing that we want. It's the feeling or experience we think we're going to get when we get it. So in terms of, finding a partner, I for sake of time, I'm just going to say things like, for many people, it's, it's the trust and intimacy. It's the stability, safety, security. It's love. I mean, it's like all of these things that we hope a partnership will bring us. For a job, it's like you have other things. So I wonder if that's also part of what might be helpful for you, is to, like, when you think about all these things that for you are evidence that you're on the right path, big things, normal things like good health, the quote unquote right career, a partnership, like it might be helpful for you to make a list of like, what is it that you think you're going to get when you get those things?
That's good. I like that. And I can appreciate what you said about grief, because, that may be something I need to work on, is grieving is still grieving, a lot of those things.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
Hey friends, if you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
When it comes to raising kids, there's so much to consider. Things like, what do we feed them? When do we feed them? How do they sleep? What does it look like to raise kind kids? How does their nervous system work? How do I keep myself calm? What are my triggers? There's so much that comes into play, and we are distilling all of that information for you at Voices of Your Village podcast, where we bring experts in the field of early childhood and education and psychology and across the board so that you don't have to comb the internet for information. You get to show up and hang out and have shame-free, judgment-free conversations and insights into what it looks like to raise kind, empathetic, emotionally intelligent humans. I'm Alyssa Blask Campbell. I have a master's degree in early childhood education. I'm a mom of 2, and I am walking this journey right alongside you doing this work. Come hang out with me at Voices of Your Village, and we can dive into real conversations with actionable tips.
And I'll say this for people listening who may have gone through a breakup or a divorce where they were the ones who initiated it. Or maybe there was a lot of things that would make it obvious that the relationship needed to end, like infidelity or abuse or something like that. And so where you're on the other side and everybody else is thinking like, oh, it's so much better. That still deserves the grief that you feel like it needs to go through. Just because you're better off, on the other side of whatever ended, like there's still grief that is allowed to be felt and worked through and honored. So do you feel like there might be feelings around some things that are in your past that you might need to spend some time processing?
Yes, 100%. And actually, I have still been working on those things with my counselor. I mean, there's grief. I've learned grief is a funny thing because you can be. I've been divorced almost 8 years, and I'm still grieving a little here and there. And sometimes I think, depending on what type of situation it is in your life, you're going to continue to grieve it.
100%.
So, yeah, and owning
that's why
that.
they call it. I had a therapist that said that's why they call it a grief cycle, and they don't call it a grief timeline. Because it cycles around and comes back. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like, man, I've talked through this. It's been 10 years.
Right.
Why am I doing this again?
Yeah, because I'm a big fan of internal family systems, also known as IFS. They talk about this a little bit and how there are versions of yourself, like parts of yourself that are always living, like inside of yourself. And they are the ones sometimes that need to hang on to and I'm using air quotes when I say the word need, that really need to process the grief longer. So it might be the 27-year-old version of you or whatever it is, like the younger version of you that had such high hopes for something different. And she's still grieving. And so that's just an example of like, maybe I think why the grief cycle keeps cycling. And that I think is where radical acceptance can very much come in handy. Not necessarily like, it's also important to like radically accept where you are right now, but also radical acceptance of sometimes the grief cycle starting over.
I like that because I have used that term myself too, radical acceptance. It's like, okay, whew, yeah.
Yeah, it can be applied in many other areas of your life. Okay, so I'm gonna pause and kind of recap so we don't get too far off track here.
Yes, please.
I wrote down that you are going, and I can send these to you. So I think first things first is for you to make a list of what are the expectations that you have of what it means to quote unquote be on the right path. So if you maybe saw a version of yourself or even saw someone else, like how they are living, what are their circumstances that would make you think like, oh, that person's on the right path or I'm on the right path. So that's one exercise. And then a list of things that you are hoping to get when you meet some of these expectations. So, we touched on the big ones: a relationship, your health, your career. What are the feelings or experiences that you're expecting will make you feel better and that you can check off that box? And then maybe spend some time, and this may be something you can talk about with your counselor, is grief and how it comes back up and what that might look like for you.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And actually, it's funny because I'm like, oh, I know, because I see him next week already. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I know exactly what we're going to talk about next week.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. And I'm going to turn it on you. So we've been talking for, I don't know, 35 minutes now. Is there anything that either I've asked you or that you've said where you feel like an assignment might be helpful for you to get to that place where you have a better understanding if you're on the right track?
I definitely think the exercises that you're going to give me is a good place to start. Some of the things that we've talked about, that you've talked about, the grief, I think that's a big one because this entire time I felt like I've been constantly still carrying something in my chest and I couldn't figure out what that is. And so maybe that's part of all of this too, is still just grieving other areas of my life, and even grieving today, like you said, that, my life looks a lot different than I'd hoped it would. So grieving that, but then also, thinking, wow, my life does look pretty good though today.
Yeah, both things can be true.
Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, I guess in the talking that you and I've done, and I know everybody's path looks different, and in terms of what they think it looks like for them, knowing they're on the right path. And I'm sure there's no like step by step manual on this is what you need to do to make sure it looks like you're on the right path. But in your experience with working with people like this, like what are some good examples of that you've talked to, or even that like for you in your life, like what are some, I guess I'm just curious because I'm also wanting to absorb information and just get
Yeah.
different fresh perspectives of, so like what does it look like for you or clients that you've worked with when they say that they know they're on the right path?
So I'll take my coach hat off here for a second, and I can speak to that for sure. And there's definitely been some things that are like your assignments now for you to get to hopefully get to that answer. And the first one is to like check your expectations. Like what are your expectations of what that looks like? Because you might uncover some really interesting things there. And those expectations might be more than any human can handle. And they also might be expectations that you don't even want, really. Like they may have been put on you by culture, society, et cetera. I think that part of it comes down to checking in with yourself to see if there is a former version of yourself or a part of you that you are trying to run away from. So I'll give you an example. Did you think of something in your life when I said that before I give an example?
I was just thinking back to like, yeah, different versions of myself in my life. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought about it that way.
Yeah, I think that this can be fairly common when someone really starts to dive deep into their own personal growth and they start to see positive progress in their lives. And then they think back about themselves, 5-10 years ago, and there can be triggering feelings around the person that they used to be, the coping mechanisms that they used, the behaviors that they did, the fact that they might have stayed in a relationship when they knew it wasn't right for them. So I'll give you a personal example. Like this was probably 12, 13 years ago. I was fairly newish in a little bit of a baby in my personal growth journey. And I would think about, who I was like when I was deep in my eating disorder. And I realized that I was ashamed of how I had behaved because I felt like I was such a quote unquote better person now. I had more tools and I was more wise and I was behaving like a like a smart, better person should. That was a huge detriment to me because you've mentioned, radical self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I was rejecting a part of me that was doing whatever she could to get her needs met at the time. I was rejecting a part of me that was in an immense amount of pain and confusion and had no tools on how to deal with that. I was giving zero compassion to myself. And so I think that when you are in a place where you're confused if you're on the right path, or even if you have a feeling that you are not on the right path, it's important to have so much compassion for yourself in the present moment, as well as all these former versions of yourself, all the way back to who you were. Mm-hmm. I personally have found a lot of strength and relief and hope when I do any kind of work around what I just mentioned, having compassion for myself and really holding these former versions of myself with such reverence and grace and love. And I was saying on another call on the podcast, like laying flowers at her feet, because she is the one who kept walking forward and did the best she could with what she had. Sometimes it was shit, but she kept walking forward to get me to where I am today as you and I are having this call. So you have versions of yourself that did the best she could with what she had, year after year, day after day after day, to get to you two. So it's like, why wouldn't we be so grateful for that? Like, why wouldn't we just cheer her on and have such immense gratitude for her?
And I really love everything that you said, and it all resonated with me because it's stuff I've talked about in program and meetings and stuff. Like these are all tools that I've learned because of that program. Like you said, the grace and the self-compassion and the self-love for me, accepting that you're right. I did the best I could with what I had at the time. Yeah. All of that really resonated with me. And it's a constant reminder that one thing I know I'm definitely doing right, that I'm on the right path with, is continuing to go to Al-Anon. I mean, it saved my life. And then I have conversations with people, and meeting someone like, meeting you and just talking to different people. It's like, this is it. This is what works. And so I guess for me, even just to start to answer a little bit of the assignment, it's like, it's going to be moments like this. And that, because, when you're working towards something, sometimes you can't see the payoff until later. And so it's instances like this where I'm seeing the payoff from all the meetings I've been to and all the conversations I've had and the work that I've done around that.
You're very self-aware. You're very, very self-aware and very self-reflective, which just it makes you wise. Like I said, you're wise beyond your years. And I hope you see that about yourself. And I hope that you take the time to really hear me with that, and even maybe do some journaling or reflection on it. I think that in the culture that we live in, and also especially, like, this is an unintended side effect of being in the world of personal growth, like being a seeker, is that sometimes we can get so focused on the destination of this path or our life purpose. Like, we don't take the time to understand that this is like, this journey, this is the path. Like you're on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Sometimes, like, and I tell people this all the time, like, in fact, I have a new book coming out next year that I have a whole chapter on. This is like, when people get panicked about their life purpose, and I'm like, honey, if you're in personal growth, like, this is it. This is your purpose. You're every single day, you getting up every day and thinking about your life and thinking about how you can make it better, and healing all those old versions of yourself, and having self-compassion, and learning to work with your emotions, and like looking for and walking towards your true self, like this North Star, this intuition that we've been talking about. That's your purpose. What if that's it? What if it's not, a certain college degree or a certain career? And like, I'm not saying those things aren't important. I'm not saying it's not important for you to like want to have a partner and a career that you love. Like, both things are true. And also, like, if you could give yourself a break.
Yeah. And I am very hard on myself too. It's kind of like you said, like, people, like, it's kind of a, I won't call it a character defect, but being
I hate
so
that term, by the way. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Not
it's
my
okay.
favorite in AA.
Yeah. And that's program coming out of me a little bit too. But it's a flaw, maybe, if it would be a much more polite
place to work on.
Yeah, a place to work on. I like that. When I'm so self-aware, and I'm constantly seeking that, I'm taking all this information in, and I'm like, okay, and then now, so this is that constant need to want to do better, and be more wise, and be more this, and I have to catch myself and say, stop, because you're right. Like, take the chokehold off, because I can do that. And that may be that I'm not even going to say maybe, is part of my struggle with this. Am I on the right path? Because I'm so hard on myself sometimes. So I'm questioning everything. It's like, well, am I on the right path? Because I want to be this person. This is where I want my life to go. Da, 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 da. And what you just said about stop, like, this is how I know I'm on the right path today. This conversation with you on this day, like, all the things that are happening right now, because this is all amazing stuff that we're talking about and working.
I mean, if I could, we have to close, and if I could just kind of sum it up. And I, when someone comes to me with a coaching topic and a coaching question, like, it is not my job to answer the question. My job is to ask you questions so you can find your way there. However, I'm going to break the rules a little bit. And now that we've already had the conversation, when I saw your question, if someone said, like, what would be your answer to that? Here's what I would say. As long as you are following the breadcrumbs and working towards trusting your intuition, that's like a big old job in and of itself. Then you could look at it like this. Whoever or whatever it was that put us on this earth, higher power, God, divine love, whatever you want to call it, energy, blah, blah, blah. It's as if they typed in the destination to Waze or like whatever Jeep Google Maps. And then it sorts itself out and it's like, okay, here's the path. And they covered up the destination. So you will never know where you're going to end up. It is a complete mystery. It is a mystery to every single person in this world. And we want to know so bad. This is why we go to tarot card readers. This is why we go to psychics. We want to know. We want the certainty. Please, we're like begging for it. We would do anything. We'd pay any amount of money to have the certainty, but it's always covered up. That part of the GPS is always covered up. And our only job is to follow the breadcrumbs, trust our intuition, always bet on ourselves, and you'll end up there. And with less fight.
That to me, what that translates to me is something that I repeat to myself a lot and almost every day is trust your higher power. Have faith over fear, because just have faith that as long as you know that's your intention, get up, show up, and don't give up. And just, if I'm trusting in my higher power and I'm living in faith, how can I not be on the right path?
Right.
And trusting that he's going to put me where he wants me. And like you said, it's all going to work out, and maybe even better than I could imagine. I just have to get up and at least do my part.
I love that. I have a very similar philosophy. The God I use uses they, them pronouns. So they, no, but I love that you are so certain in that. Like, you're just like, yep, this is like, lean on that. I hope that when you re-listen to this episode, like that you lean on that. And okay, so I'm just going to rattle down, and I will email you your assignments. So again, you're going to make a list of expectations of what it means to be on the right path, a list of things that you want on the other side of the path, like what feelings and experiences do you think you're going to get when you get there? Talk to your counselor next week around grief or any other emotions that maybe you have made up a story that should be done by now, or that I don't need to go back to that place. Anything else that I missed?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I will talk to you about when we're going to do a recap, and hopefully I'll have an update for everyone. Thank you everyone for listening. And you know how much I'm grateful for your time. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans, and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes. AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free, and get your hands on that free podcast feed.